Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, as the name suggests, Beyond Borders discussion is around how you can scale your business beyond borders globally. And today's focus is on the Austrian startup ecosystem. So, we have two eminent panelists here, Cambis Coensal-Vaiga and Laurel Ragel. So first, let us start to explore the Austrian startup ecosystem, and then maybe we can move on to their specific roles and how they help in building startups. So let's just start with Cambis. Cambis, what do you think makes Austria an excellent choice for entrepreneurs for setting up business?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's my first time here at Huddle Global. It's actually my first time in India, but it will not be my last time. So I plan to come here more often. My name is Cambis. I'm at the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber, which is the Chamber of Commerce, where most of the companies in Austria are a member by law, including all the startup companies. But just to give you that I also share experience as a founder. I was a founder myself for 10 years in different fields, education, HR, mobility. Then I moved into angel investing and venture capital investing, and 4 years ago I took over the position. I want to start with some numbers to present you the Austrian startup ecosystem. So think about this. If you compare the increase in venture capital investment into startups from 2018 to now, and you take a look at the top 10 countries worldwide, number one is Switzerland, second is Singapore, third is United Arab Emirates, and number four is Austria. So Austria, in terms of increase in terms of venture capital investment, is number 4 worldwide when it comes to investing. Still, in terms of investment volume, we're lagging behind. That's something we're working on, but the ecosystem is evolving and evolving. I can tell you this because I've been there since 2011. So what makes Austria special? First of all, we have created a new India-Austria startup bridge, which is very new, where we, first of all, bring Indian delegations, startups, investors, policymakers to Austria and vice versa. We try to access markets in both directions. We try to share talent, know-how, but also increase the investment volume into both directions. From Austria to India, like Laura and her team does, but also vice versa from India to Austria. We have one of the best, if not the best, early stage public grants ecosystem worldwide, based on a number of public grants that are invested into particularly early stage startups. And why is it important? Think from an investor's perspective. Early stage on, there's a lot of risk, and if there are public grants that actually reduce this kind of risk in terms of liquidity failure, that's a big actually advantage for investors as well. So one of the strongest, if not the strongest, early stage public grants ecosystem. Second, Austria is a strategic gateway to Europe, and that's how the bridge works. So Indian startups trying to set up the business in Austria, and through Austria they want to expand into all of Europe. And our organization, the Chamber of Commerce, is very well connected all over the world, but also in Europe. So actually we can give you access to all the different markets through all the different teams and offices we have there. Some of the key verticals, which I can then talk about later on. For instance, we have a strong ecosystem when it comes to life sciences, including medtech, health tech, biotechnology, climate. For instance, climate technology is huge. But there are also, for instance, and something I'm also sure that... So two of the biggest prop tech startups in Europe actually come from Austria. One is Planradar, one is Gropius. So also real estate technology is something that we're working on. That's for the...
Yeah, so coming to Laura, do you agree with this, or do you have more points to add? What do you think are the major factors that makes the Austrian startup ecosystem strong?
Yeah, I think, Cambis, you've mentioned a lot of great things about Austria, and it feels kind of surreal to sit here in India and talk about the Austrian ecosystem. But actually, I think there are many similarities and also things where we can learn from each other, because Austria is also a small country, and in Europe there is strong competition between the startup nations. It's about where do startups set up their business, where do investors invest in. So similar to India, where there is competition between the different parts of India, it's the same in Europe. And I think Kerala has done a great job to position itself and has done a lot of partnerships already. And we try to do the same in Austria, as Kambis just mentioned. And I'm really proud of that there's so much collaboration already between India and Austria. We also have a quite special connection to India because this year we started to invest in Indian VC funds. We basically did this by a rational decision because as an investor you want to invest into funds where you can probably get the highest returns. So we have screened the whole world basically and looked for enormous growth in GPT because this usually relates a lot to the growth you can expect from your venture capital investments. And we have met wonderful GPs in India. And we invested in 2 funds. They called Inuka Capital and Neon Capital. Both are based in Bangalore. And through to them, we have experienced or gotten way more insights in what's happening in India. And this makes it really exciting for us also the other way around to come from Austria and invest in India. And a couple more points what makes Austria so special. I think similar to here, we have a small ecosystem, but really, really great people, and there's this really strong collaboration also on a national level. So basically, we all know each other because there are not so many people involved, which means things move fast. Companies can grow fast. It can be a fast access to funding. And this also enables company to be market leaders really fast because if there is less competition, you can be one of the best really soon. And I think the same principle applies to India. And I think this is something which is really beneficial to starting off. And everybody who starts today will be having a really big company in the next 5 years. And then other will get started as well. And I think to do this effect, both India and Austria will see hopefully more growth in venture capital and also continue developing.
Thanks, Laura. Canvas, as you had indicated earlier, shall we now deep dive into the key verticals that are operating in the Austrian ecosystem?
Sure, so I mentioned already everything related to life sciences, so health tech, med tech, biotechnology. There are clusters in Austria in different states. A lot of also bigger corporations are doing research and development. There are a lot of pharma companies. Then we have climate. All over Europe, actually, climate is one of the verticals that is growing at the highest rate in terms of like investment and the number of like scale-ups. But I also want to mention some others. So for instance, I know Kerala is very famous for its space tech or space hub. And Austria is also trying to push this further. So we have space tech clusters. So for instance, the European Space Association, they have a program called ESA Big, and its European headquarters is in Austria. We have over 80 space tech companies, and some of them are like world market leaders in a very specific niche. So it's still more in the early stage. When it comes to later stages, there are other countries that might be more interesting, but when it comes to early stage, a lot of things are happening there. The topics of culture and creativity. I have been talking with some participants about solutions they have in the tourism sector. I mean, Austria also stands for culture. Also in recent years, the number of Indian movie productions in Austria have actually increased. So it comes also culture and technology. So that's a strong focus. We want to combine the culture Austria has with highest technology. This is also vertical that is growing. Think about museums, arts, music, entertainment, etc. And sports as well. Sports is very early on, still in the going. But when it comes to think about expansion, we try to establish good connections to North America and the Middle East, GCC, and that's also one of the topics we're working on. Prop tech, I mentioned, real estate innovation. 2 of the biggest European prop tech startups actually come from Austria. And these are some of the verticals we are actually, where a lot of things are happening in terms of like startups, investment, and programs we offer.
Thanks, Kambis. So, Laura, do you have anything to add here? Any other verticals do you think has a scope for growth in the future, or do you find any gaps in the market as of now, which the startups here who probably wish to, invest in Austria can leverage on?
Yeah, definitely. What I find really interesting, I see a lot of founders who start their business in India and then they go to the US for expansion, for capital, for further clients. But why not going to Europe as well? I mean, as Canvas just said, we have so many like support services, and the US is tough. It's really, really tough. And I think in Europe, you can like pick countries where you maybe have more of a soft landing, especially in the verticals you have just mentioned. That I think this could also be a benefit of the collaboration. Just think about where you want to expand, where you want to collaborate. There are really great VC funds also based in Europe, and also especially in Austria. Also one of the biggest VC funds from Europe is based in Austria. It's called Speed Invest. So also definitely make sure to check them out.
Thanks, Laura. Canvas, so going specifically to your role, how does your daily role look like? How do you, handhold startups in achieving their ambition?
Yeah, it's a very always an exciting day with a lot of conversations and talks. Actually, that's what I do. I have a lot of meetups with startups in Austria, but also very international ones. So like a lot of founders from India, for instance, who are interested to somehow move operations to Austria as well, or going to Europe. So I have a lot of meetups. That's what I do. And because of my experience as a founder and an investor myself, it's another type of conversation we can have. So people not just come to me to get like governmental services, but also to get feedback on how to go for fundraising, how to set up their pitch deck, how to actually reshape the business model. That's something I can share as well because of the experience, but I'm not the only one. So at the Chamber of Commerce, we have several people who are focused on startups only, and we actually cover the whole life cycle of a startup, from pre-foundation to scaling up internationally. That's how our organization is structured. So before you found a company, you can come to us. We can help you with the services, with potential grants, with the right legal form, with setting up the business legally. Then when you're founded, you want to actually become more famous, maybe find potential corporate clients from Austria. That's where we actually help as well. So this kind of matchmaking process. And then if you want to go global, international, we have over 100 offices all over the world, including India as well, several ones, where we actually support you with your expansion process then. So you come to us, we say, okay, these are the top 5 markets for you, can be all over the world, and then we connect you with the local teams, and then they will support you to gain market access with the right experts, with the right organization, maybe we find potential investors as well. So that's actually the main part. Apart from that, 2 other key activities. First, education is very important for us. So we try to educate founders as well, particularly those who are not so experienced. We focus a lot on content, e-learning programs, and so on. And the third thing is we also are part of the policy-making process. So we lobby for startups on Austrian and European Union level when it comes to new laws for startups. So for instance, together, Laura, she has also a role at the ministry. You didn't mention her. We were working on a new legal entity form called Flexible Company, which was initiated this year with a new employee stock option plan. So these are the things we've been working on. The next big topics will be tax incentives for actually venture capital investment. So if you start investing into startups, that there will be some kind of tax incentives for you as an investor. So also the policy making side I wanted to mention because that's also a vital role at the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, Camby, since you touched upon the legal procedures, are there any restrictions, legal restrictions for entrepreneurs who are trying to expand to Austria?
Yeah. So it's not like that you can just say, okay, I go to a platform and set up a business in Austria. We're not there yet. We're working on it, but it's actually, it's a process that takes time. So it's not like in Estonia, for instance. But we have created this India-Austrian Startup Bridge, actually, to make this legal setup of businesses from India, particularly startups in Austria, easier. And we have our own agency for this. It's called the Austrian Business Agency, the ABA. They have also teams for specifically the Indian markets where you will be guided and supported when it comes to setting up your business. Then we have 9 states in Austria. For Vienna is one state, Upper Austria is another one, and so on. They all have their own specific startup program. For instance, Vienna has a Vienna Startup Package where you can actually apply for, and when you become part of it, you also will have like easier access to set up your business in Vienna. You have the potential to access public grants. You can participate at the Vienna Up, which is like actually our biggest tech festival. And this year, the biggest international delegation was from India. So over hundreds of people from India, startups, investors joining us as well.
Thanks, Kambis. So we all know that Vienna is one of the most livable cities and has been so since years. So how do you think that has, contributed to the growth of market over there?
Yeah, come to the question really quickly. I just need to add, I mean, now you're like explaining all the amazing programs, and also everything is for free, and it's true. Like I know about all that organizations. It's really amazing that you can just contact us. Basically, we connect you if you want to do business in Austria, and then there are like a lot of people who would help you for free just to make sure you have a good experience there, and also highly skilled people will guide you through the process. And when it comes to the most livable city, I mean, I love Vienna. That's also why I live there. And I think this also relates to a lot of other people. And I mean, then due to this effect, you really have a high talent density, especially of skilled people, because they just want to live there. And then, of course, they also looking for jobs in the same region. And I think this is a really positive effect to the startup ecosystem, but also need to say it's not enough to be the most livable city. Of course, you need to have a running economy, you need to have a sufficient job offering, you need to have a sufficient entrepreneurs starting companies that also these people who live there have an opportunity to join a startup instead of a corporate, for example. So I think this is a good baseline, and it definitely helps. And I think Vienna is worldwide known to be one of the greatest cities to live in. And I think all of what Kambis also mentioned is kind of built on top this great infrastructure, this great, for example, we have really great housing policies. It's quite easy to get a flat also to affordable price with one of the best metro systems in the world. Vienna is extremely, extremely clean. I think you will be quite surprised when you visit Austria. It's quite different, and also different for us to come to India.
Thanks, Laura. So, Campus, what are the challenges that you have usually seen with foreign entrepreneurs while they are starting to, set up their business in Austria?
Yeah, first of all, which visa to apply? There are different categories of visa. It's under the, actually, the program is called Red, White, Red Card, which is like, has different categories. So if you apply as a startup or as a self-employed person or as a skilled employee, 2-3 years ago, it was still more difficult, particularly when it comes to the time of process. And time, as we know in the startup world, is very important. So we worked on it to make the process faster. Still, we haven't reached the point where we want to be. So the time of the processing, this is something you need to calculate as well. It's not like that it takes 2 weeks. So it might take some months. Second, for instance, if you are in the European Union citizen, then you can set up the business very easily, very fast and so on. But if you are from outside the European Union, that's actually where you go for these visa application programs, and that's where it takes a bit more time. But India is in a more favorable position because we have this new bridge and we have new partnerships on a very high level, political level. So actually the processing should become faster and faster.
Thanks, Campus. So, Laura, can you comment on the participation of women in Austria when it comes to setting up businesses and running them?
Yeah, I mean, Austria is also known for having one of the highest number in whole Europe for female founders and also mixed teams. And I think there was also a really big effort on a lot of initiatives took place to foster it. And this is also not happening overnight, so a lot of work is involved if you really want to have more women participating as startup founders and also as investors. We're not at 50-50 yet, but as I just said, we're one of the leading nations also in Europe when it comes to this effect. And what helped a lot were building networks. So there are many entrepreneurial networks for women in Europe, in Austria specifically. There are many education programs, really guiding programs when you want to start up, that it's kind of soft landing. You have a lot of support, there's mentoring, and I think this is also something which would work for India. I think also in Kerala it would be possible, or maybe there is already different programs especially designed for women to get started as entrepreneurs.
Just wanted to add something here. So one of the biggest VC funds focused on female founders is, for instance, in Austria called Fund F. It's one of the biggest in Europe.
Good to know that. Thank you. And how do you think is the role of institutions there, educational institutions, in bringing up the culture?
Yeah, I think in Austria, like education, like primary education, secondary education is not that much focused on entrepreneurship yet. Maybe that's similar in India, don't really know. So there need to be some point in an entrepreneur's life where he got in touch with entrepreneurship. For example, now there is a program called Startup Week, where kids in school between 17 and 18 years old, they have 1 week during their school time where they work on their first startup project. And due to this, it's way easier to have the first contact with the startup world and become an entrepreneur later. And we also know the earlier kids start to work in an entrepreneurial way, and this does not mean you need to start a startup. This also means in your corporate job, for example, you work in an entrepreneurial way. It's really important to behave in this way to also become successful in business long term. And how earlier this happens in education, the better. And I think this startup weeks help a lot. And this could also be something which could also be possible to do for other countries. And then I think it's a lot about in studies, when you go to have your bachelor or master's, there are also, again, many startup programs which help you get started.
Thanks, Laura. Campus, you have already mentioned about the Vienna App Startup Festival. So are there any other technical events where startups and companies from here can look forward to participate in? Or can you elaborate more about Vienna App? What is the process if they want to participate?
Sure. So also here some numbers to share. So half of the startup ecosystem in Austria is located in Vienna. So half of the startups we have in Austria are located in Vienna, and they actually secure 60% of all the venture capital funding. So Vienna is actually the biggest hub overall, also when it comes to tech festivals. And the Vienna App, you have to imagine it's not a 1-day conference or 2 days, it's like for 2 weeks. And it consists of decentralized events in the range of 50 to 100 different events, focused on different verticals, topics, etc., etc. It's very international, so over 80% of all the participants come from abroad. There are other tech conferences as well. For instance, Salz 21, which is in Salzburg. Salzburg, another culture city in Vienna, also very international. It's also a big conference actually for several days, but not compared to the Vienna App. And apart from that, we have very focused events in all different states with focus on specific niches and technologies and verticals and so on, depending on the activity in the specific state, so what they're good at, where they have know-how, etc., etc. But if you come to Austria one day, maybe next year in May, then the Vienna App will happen again, and the delegations from India will be, again, one of the biggest, if not the biggest. Then the Vienna App is the one place to go in Austria.
Thanks, Campus. I'm sure there'll be many companies who are looking forward to participating in the festival, being one of the largest startup festivals in the world. So Laura, what are some of the factors that you look for in a company before you decide to invest in it?
Yeah, if we invest in startups directly in Europe and in VC funds outside of Europe, so it's different what we look for. But if we want to invest in a startup, we invest really early stage. So pre-seed, we one of the first investors going in usually also before there is an MVP. Often there's just the founder with the idea, and it's already interesting for us given that we're angel investors and we also invest our own money. So it's different from a VC fund. And we usually look for really strong founders, especially founders who have started a business before already, really have deep industry knowledge, and really know what they're going for. And we look for that really entrepreneurial driven mindset. So somebody who knows exactly what to do, knows which feedback to take, and also knows how to get forward really fast, and trial and error is the mantra here. And we also look for a specific space. We mostly invest in software infrastructure, which means open source, dev tools, data, AI, so any kind of things you need to need to have to enable software coding faster, and we also invest in deep tech companies, also in space companies. So it's also really exciting that Keala is really known for their space setup and their organizations here. And then the third factor is usually the setup. So which other investors are joining? Do you think we and the other people joining the company can make sure that the company can raise the next round and can grow successfully over years, that we'll have a good exit in the future?
Yeah, since you mentioned about data and AI, so how do you see the increasing trend of technology and how it is being adopted in Austria? Is there a growing demand for such technologies there?
I think there's a worldwide growing demand for even more code, even more software. Now with all the development with AI, everything gets more technological, everything gets more digitized. So there's a really high need to make code more efficient, code more faster, testing of code faster. So I think for all that development, there's a high opportunity for also founders to get started and set up companies in that space.
Also wanted to add something here. For instance, I just had a discussion with the Kerala startup mission. Yeah? For instance, about industrial automation. So Austria is very, very experienced when it comes to industrial automation. So we have a lot of supply companies for all the bigger countries surrounding us and even further. And this is, for instance, where demand is growing, the combination of industrial automation with AI and software. And this is, for instance, where Indian startups can come into play.
Thanks, Candice. And also, in one of our earlier discussions with Startup Mission, you had mentioned that there was a bit of work involved in, positioning Austria in the map of Europe when it comes to business. So could you please elaborate on that?
Maybe can you repeat the question? I'm not sure if I got it right.
Positioning of Austria as a place for business.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So we position Austria as the strategic gateway to expanding into all of Europe, because we have the infrastructure, we are well connected with all the other countries, and if you want to expand into all of Europe and the European Union specifically, Austria can be the hub, to come, set up the business, and through Austria, you will get the support to expand even further. That's actually how we position Austria. We do the same also, for instance, in GCC countries, Gulf Cooperation countries, the same. We also have, for instance, a program with the UAE in both directions, where we send startups from Austria to UAE, but also vice versa. Again, being the strategic gateway to Europe. That's how we position ourselves, based on the infrastructure we have, supporting network, but also the global network where we can actually help.
Thanks, Campus. Laura, could you please elaborate on the services that you offer at ROI Ventures?
Yeah, of course. At ROI Ventures, we basically invest in startups. So our main service is to give money, but that's not the only thing we do. So we work a lot with the founders in our portfolio on the current funding round. So when somebody's raising, we often make intros to other angel investors, to VC funds, to make sure it's not just us investing, we're actually a group of investors who are supporting the founders. And then we're also quite active when it comes to sales. I mean, the most important thing for startups is usually to have traction, to get their ARR running. And we help with sales strategies, and we also do a lot of intros to Austrian companies, because we invest in B2B, and we also invest outside Austria. So often it's super relevant, for example, for German startups to get into touch with Austrian corporates to make business with them. And we also help a lot with then raising the next rounds and the next rounds, as founders are usually fundraising all the time. There's a lot of work for us to do.
Thanks, Laura. So recently you had put up a post in LinkedIn saying that your company is interested in, adding 2-3 companies to your portfolio, and you had received an overwhelming response. So would you like to talk about that? What were the type of companies that approached you mostly, and yeah?
Yeah, we usually invest in 10 to 15 startups a year, and we always do 50 to 100K checks, which is like about one startup a month. This year we have invested in 9 companies so far, so we're still looking for 2 to 3 more investments for this year. And I've posted about this on LinkedIn, and there were so many founders reaching out, which was insane. Like, I've just answered over 250 messages from founders. And right now we have shortlisted 8 companies where we dig deeper now, and I'm super excited how if we're going to invest in. I just need to say that we just directly invest into startups from Europe, so we're not directly investing in Indian startups. We have therefore invested in Indian VC funds. So if you're looking for funding, I would definitely recommend you to reach out to Neon Capital and also to Inuka Capital. Also let me know if I should help you with an intro to them. They are super great investors and they know the Indian market really well, and they can basically do this for us.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks for both of your insights. So one thing maybe that I forgot to mention is that both of them are very active on LinkedIn as well. And they are very enthusiastic about giving guidance on startup and investments. Thank you, Campus, and thank you, Laura. Thanks a lot for all your insights. I hope there'll be others wishing to interact with you to get to know more about their opportunities and expanding. And thanks a lot for traveling to India. This is their first time in India. And thanks for traveling and taking your time out to attend this event. Means a lot to us. Thank you. Thanks a lot.